time for a random project. So I've been making a lot of homemade glitter lamps, and one of the nice things about them is that they're powered by the heat from an LED. They're very well balanced, and you're kind of restricted in the colours you get. You can get the sort of solid red, solid green, solid blue GU10 LED lamps. You can get the hydroponic ones, which have like 2 red and 1 blue, I think it is, and you can get the RGB colour changing ones, but they don't tend to spread the light out so much, because if you want cyan, for instance, the red one won't light, so the light will bias to one side, and they won't tend to operate at the full power of the fixture. So I thought, what better project than to rip apart a Poundland lamp and put in some new chips and actually make a custom coloured lamp with 2 blue and 1 green chip. So here's the lamp. Let's check it's working to start off with. And it does work. So I shall just park that back over here. Oh, it's heavily spring-loaded. Excellent. Now, the LEDs are typical 1 watt LEDs, and I bought them on eBay from a seller called, and this is another quite, I wish they'd use short names, H-quality understroke electronic. And they do all the colours, and typically it works out about typically 30 pence per LED for the colours, and closer to about 15 to 20 pence per LED for the whites. Now, I had to rebag them when they came, because they came in polythene bags, and I don't like it when stuff that I would regard as being static sensitive is not supplied in anti-static bags. I prefer it to be supplied in anti-static bags. However, when I test them all at very low current, they all lit. And usually if there's any sign of static damage, they won't light. So that's a good sign. So let's get the ones I'm looking for, which are green and blue. I also bought 50 of these blank star circuit boards from them, which came in about £2. And I just thought it'd be quite fun to make some of these up. There's no real point really, but it's, you know, it's just another thing in the kit of stuff that, you know, if I ever have a need for that, I can make custom LEDs up. So let's get this lamp apart to start off with. So as with most of these lamps, the front cover unscrews. Now, it's worth feeling the lenses in these, because I noticed that in some lamps, if there's any looseness, that means the LEDs aren't being pressed back hard enough, which these aren't super tight, but they'll do. I'm not 100% sure what size LED chips are in these. I don't know if they're going to be 1 watt or 3 watt LEDs, even though this is a 2.7 watt LED light. Hopefully they'll be a similar, but I noticed there is a slight package dimensional difference with some LEDs, that some are so much bigger and thicker that the lenses don't clamp them down as tightly if they're not the same type of LED. So I'm not 100% sure. We'll find out and put them in. So here's the LED circuit board in there as standard, and it's stuck in with the sort of the standard silicon heatsink compound, but it's not glued. So initially I'm going to desolder these leads. I'm going to actually touch them with a bit of lead-based solder just to make it flow better, because it looks like that dry, crusty, lead-free stuff. And rather fortuitously, red is actually positive, which is quite nice. So I'm just going to lift those wires off. Or am I going to lift those wires off? Of course, it's on a heatsink background, so it's not so willing to come off. It takes a wee bit more heat to melt it, because it is on an aluminium backed substrate, which does show how effective that substrate is in taking the heat away. Oh, that really isn't melting very easily, is it? I'm going to flow some more lead solder onto that and see if I can just liberate it up a little bit. That is just knocked me off easily. Ah, get off! Well, this project started well. That is surprising how much heat that sucks away. Okay, that's it. Rather messily removed now. So I'm going to grab my pliers and just grip an LED at random and just sort of hoik it out. And I'll also pull those wires through a bit. Oh, look at the room, and there's tons of room. Didn't know about that. That would have been so much easier if I'd known that. I'm just going to melt the solder on those and just ping it off. Like that. Ready for reinstallation. So I'm going to clean this up now, he said, having placed it down his workbench and left a big silicone skid mark. So let's get a bit of paper towel and clean this off to start off with to make it more pleasant to work with. I can add more afterwards. So we'll give it a clean. And then these LEDs tend to be held down by the solder, but they often have a little touch of the silicone underneath them as well, the heat shrink compound. So I'm going to just gently lift that LED up on one leg, and then the other one. These ones have an absolutely minute trace of the heatsink compound, if at all, under them. What the other one's going to be like? That was fairly dry, that one. Okay, they're not being run at mega high power, but it's still useful to spread that heat about a bit. I don't know how much heat will actually be conducted. Oh, these are terrible for the heatsink compound. It's just tiny little dabs at a corner. And that's the last LED. And I'm going to clean those pads and clean off the minute quantity of heatsink compound that's on them. So I'm just going to clean those off. And then I'm going to use the desoldering braid just to lift the last drops of solder off, just to dry those pads a wee bit. Desoldering braid. This is where I have to fight that struggle against the natural heat sinking capability of the aluminium core laminate. So let's see how well that lasts. Oh, I've just stuck the heat shrink, not the heat shrink, the solder wick to the circuit board briefly. It's working, but I will say the fact it's aluminium back just makes things just that little bit harder. Now this is where it would be really handy having some sort of very sticky heatsink compound that would actually hold the LEDs in place while I'm soldering them, but I don't. So I'm going to have to improvise. I'm also going to have to check the polarity of these. They're not really obvious. As happens with eBay LEDs, you sometimes end up with ones with slightly less than clear polarity markings. So that's the two blue ones. And it doesn't really matter what order I put them on in, so I'll get the green one out as well. And I'm going to grab a heatsink compound. And I'm going to be fairly thrifty with this. I'm not going to splatter it everywhere, so I'm going to use the screwdriver just to gently dab a wee smear on the pads in the middle. Actually, you know what, I really should do it one at a time, shouldn't I? I'm sure I've done this before and made the same mistake, that I ended up all over the finger, so let's do it one pad at a time. So I'm going to actually wipe that one off again. Right, so polarity. Best way to check polarity is to get a meter and just stick it on at low current into the diode test and try them both way around. That's the green one and that's the positive over there, so I'm going to start off with that one and I'm going to place it down as centrally as possible. This is where the residue of solder is actually going to make it just that little bit harder to stick that on. But I just want to get it roughly in position. Oh yeah, that is not easy at all. And I'm just going to press that down slightly just to reflow the solder a bit. And hopefully it might just snag. No, it didn't. Oh. Right, I'm going to have to try and flow that one then. This is the sort of thing that after you've done it, you know, a few times, it's going to get a lot easier. I might just tin that pad just a tiny wee bit. I'm guessing that, you know, the people that work in the factories that put these things together, if it's not done totally by machine, will probably be dab hands at it. the LED alignment is probably fairly critical for the lenses, so I'm going to have to shuffle that just a tiny bit to get it square in the pad. I don't know if I've got enough leeway to just bend the LEDs around. Don't want to do that in case it puts too much pressure on them. Oh yeah, this is not easy. This is not easy at all. Ow! This is bringing back memories of the last one of these I tried to convert to. Was it a different? Did I convert it to warm white or something like that? I can't remember. Okay, that's better. It's not perfect, but it's better. Now I'm going to press that down firmly while I solder this one. Right, well that's one done. I might actually just touch a wee bit of solder onto these pads as well while I'm doing this. Next LED. Let's get the polarity check. The blue ones are so much dimmer that I'm going to have to shield them from the light while I test this, because they really, at the low current, test current, they're very dim indeed. Okay, so that's the positive that way, and I'll test this one at the same time. You guys won't see these light at all. Yep. Okie dokie. And I can put that meter out the way now. And I shall splat a bit more. You know what? I'm going to have another go at cleaning these pads, because I did not clean them properly before. Probably because I didn't tin them again with the nice fresh lead-based solder. Let's see if that makes an improvement to the desoldering of them, because it might actually, the fresh solder may flow up better. Oh, that's much better. That's leaving them very clean. Because the first LED I soldered there was just not sitting 100% right, because the coarseness, the sort of ridges of the existing solder just made it a little bit trickier. So now I'm going to try and stick one of these blue LEDs on and get it. Oh, actually, heatsink compound, heatsink compound. God, I'm really forgetting everything these days. Heatsink compound, a wee smear of that in the back of that. A wee bit more just to make it stick up proud a little bit so it squishes. And I shall place that LED on. I think this is one of these things that if you had a little tool, if you were doing a lot of these, you could make a little tool that cupped over the LED in the middle and just, right, let's see, am I going to be able to just tack that? No, I'm not going to be able to tack it. If you had a wee tool that just cupped over the LED in the middle and kind of clamped it in place. So let's see, are these going to flow? Is it going to actually make a mess? Is it going to move the LED? No, it didn't. That's good. So now I'll flow the other side. And on to the last LED. Bit more heatsink compound. Ooh, tons of compound. And the last LED goes into position. A vacuum pick and place tool would be quite handy. So I'm going to try and hold that down. Oh, it's so easy to move it, it's so rough, it's sliding about. And that heat shrink compound will be spread everywhere but where it's needed now. God, it's so easy to move it just as you're actually soldering it, or even positioning it. Let's just try and settle that down a bit. This looks good. So a bit more solder, a bit more solder. I've run out of solder, one moment. So I'm going to press this down and flow this side, and then go and give the other side a wee zap again. And theoretically, that should be my new cyan LED with one green chip and two blue chips. So I'm going to stick this back into the light. I could test it, you know, I could actually get my bench meter here and I could stick it to about 9 volts and current limit. So let's actually just go below, let's go just below about, let's go to about 6 volts, and I'll just tack it on to there and there, and I can see all the LEDs glowing very dimly. I'll just turn the voltage up a wee tad. I should actually bring this right into the middle where you can actually see it. So the green is the brightest as ever, so I'm just turning it up to the point I get about, oh, that's a tiny amount of current. So that's at about 50 milliamps, and that's already looking quite bright. It's looking quite nice. Okay, let's stick this back in the light and see if it detonates first with a loud bang. So I'm not sure I'm going to shove those wires down. I can pull them up now. But let's solder this down. I'll re-tin these leads, since I've already tinned the pads, with some nice fresh lead. So that one's the negative terminal. And that went on a lot easier than it came off. Here's the positive terminal. And now I'm going to lift this circuit board out and put some heat sink compound in the back of it, and then reassemble it. So let's get the circuit board out, splish some heat sink compound about willy-nilly. Put 3 distinct blobs on there. Now I'm going to try and feed this down. I think I'm better actually popping the wires through the middle and then poking them back down through the middle. So I'm going to keep these wires up here while I lower this LED down. Typically speaking, the LED aligns up with the holes there, revealing the screws in the back housing, so that should be alright. Now I'm going to try and shove those wires down the middle hole into the ballast area, into where the little electronic driver is, and that should be it. Just ready to get its lenses on. So I'm going to clean my fingers of silicone compound and then do the delicate juggling act that is putting lenses back on. First lens. Is that going to stay upright? This is where it's like dominoes. If you let one go, they just all pile over. Now theoretically I just need to drop that on like that, wiggle it so all the lenses pop through, line up the holes and stick the screws in, and that should be my new LED lamp. So let's get the screws back in. One. Two, and the last screw, and I'm not tightening them up fully yet because I want to actually make sure all those lenses are sat into place. So they actually feel pretty good. They feel like they're sitting in place okay. So I'm going to screw this down now. And we'll plug it in and see what happens. What's the worst that could happen? Well, it could go bang. And to be honest, that's not always a bad thing. Yeah, those lenses actually seem a bit tighter than before, so maybe these LEDs are a little bit thicker. So I shall just bring this in, turn it on, and now we have our brightly coloured turquoisey lamps. How's that going to look? That's looking quite a nice combination of colours. Okay, I'm going to stick this in the glitter lamp now, and then I'll show you what that looks like. Oh yeah, that looks nice. I like that colour combination a lot. It's really kind of swamping out the camera, but you can see what it's projecting outwards is mainly blue splashes with little green dots. It's quite a nice colour effect. I like that. It's a good colour indeed. It's very, what's the best way? It's a deep cyan. It's very attractive. Yep, good result.